But then, have you ever sat back and thought about the chain of events which led you to where you are right now? For instance, why did you click on this video? I mean, it's as simple as maybe you like the anime in the thumbnail, but then why do you like that anime? Maybe it was something you watched randomly, or maybe a friend recommended it to you and you ended up liking it. So how did you meet that friend becomes why you clicked on this video. So was that maybe school or work or something like a common interest, maybe even from something like an anime? But then how did you get that interest to begin with? Was it from family, maybe a different friend? And this cycle goes on. It goes back endlessly in time to the very first moment anything achieved sentience and made its first decision. Every second of our lives is built on many which came before it in an intricate web that seems so complex in the present, but then so simple and easy in the past. And there's nothing more so important to that than another life, when two of these webs entangle with each other, forever changing the course they were on. The memories which influenced one begin to bleed into another, the feelings which predicted another begin to do the same for someone new. Because we're all so complex by our very nature, there's nothing more impactful to a human life than another thing just like it. The simplest moments can kick off such a grand impact, from a careful glance to the basic duties of a job. They can also destroy what they once created, leaving us with a hole much larger than the action which caused it. Today, I want to look at these interactions, sometimes choices, sometimes just the random nature of life, the moment where two lives meet and collide, and just how simple such complexity can be. This is a paradox of human life, something we can't escape, so why don't we observe it for all that it is? There's probably no better anime to begin this exploration with than Durarara. Built on the paradoxical nature of everyday life in a downright wild city and featuring one of the largest well-utilized casts, there's plenty of collisions between two people. The series begins with Mikado moving to Ikebukuro, a bustling district of Tokyo full of oddities. Within this mess of flying vending machines, back alley doctors, and headless riders, he rejoins his friend Kida, who moved away from their small town years prior, before they bump into Anri, a shy girl they each develop feelings for. In a mixture of daily drama and world-changing secrets, their lives become completely entangled in ways they would have never imagined. And for two of them, it started with a simple glance. We witness a beautiful moment, the agony of choice, which begins with Mikado debating if he wants to become one of the two class representatives. Halfway through raising his hand, he's beaten to the punch by Anri, the girl he has a crush on. Unopposed for the position, she then asks the class for a boy to fill the other slot, as per the rules. Mikado's mind swirls with questions even as he was about to volunteer before. It'll be a good way to meet people and even get closer to someone he likes, but it's also a new responsibility and a lot of hassle. Is it really worthwhile? There's opportunity right there, but doubt begins to surround it. What if it all ends up being a waste and his time is given for nothing he actually wanted to gain from it? Fortunately for him, the collision of life forces his hand. As he looks up, Anri is staring in his direction. Her missing friend is supposed to be at the desk behind him, so he checks to see if maybe that's where she's looking. As far as he knows, though, their eyes met. As the rest of the class begins to whisper about taking the position, he affirms himself and raises his hand. Anri doesn't know his name, searching the list nervously for it, so maybe she was just looking past him. But does it matter if it was on purpose or an accident in the end? What we witness here is the disconnect between what we actually know and what we think we know. We can consider a lot of what might happen, like whether becoming class rep will be a hassle, much more so than we can the definites of the situation, like that it will bring him closer to Anri. We weigh every option as if we somehow reach a true conclusion from them all, considering everything which both will and won't happen, but all of this is a lie. We have no idea of what will happen, even if we can hazard a guess. We can look at the trajectory two lives will take if they collide, which direction they will go, with no concept of what path they will actually follow. It's terrifying. What's beautiful about the collision of life is that there are moments in which this false calculation is abandoned. There are times when simple gestures, small decisions, seemingly meaningless actions rush to the forefront and overcome our limited capacity and drive us forward. They steal us out of our mental prison and force us to act. Would he have become class rep without that glance, the chance of their eyes meeting? Who knows? But it does show just how simple it can be. Mikado was a boy wishing for change. He left his small hometown for the hustle of the city because he was bored of the everyday life he led. He attempted to fix that boredom at times, but never found satisfaction, always found himself needing something new. As he's called out for by Izaya, a shady information broker later,
I know you came here to Tokyo hoping to escape the humdrum, but in about 6 months, this'll all seem pretty ordinary to you.
He was attempting many much more complex things than accepting the role of class rep, but none of them provided a change which satisfied him until that. When he was looking for it, he couldn't find it. As things grow out of hand and gang warfare coats Ikebukuro involved in the circuit of this trio, he wishes for one thing only, the simple life he had had with her and his best friend to return. I bring all of this up, how important it was in his other efforts, because it shows the power two lives colliding has. It can overcome weeks or months or even years of effort and ushers in massive changes in our lives. It creates waves which ripple forth for years because that's the power one life has on another. Both are equal, both can have the same force on impact. And because it started from something so simple, we have to wonder, is the problem that we just often ignore such things? That we overthink them, try to force them where they aren't instead of looking for where they are? The number of times we can remember such things happening and the number of times they actually have creates a clear disconnect. What if you said hello to that person your eyes met in class rather than darting away? Just held for one more moment, turned it from an accident into something more. We don't know if it would be good or if it would be bad, but it would be something, wouldn't it? And if it isn't, so what? Trying didn't hurt us. If we were more aware of this kind of power we have of living in the moment, how often would we notice such things? How much more often would our lives change, or would we at least recognize that change? Other series offer us a look at how easy it can be to miss such things, and the guilt we can feel once we recognize the simplicity which could have bettered the life of someone else or even our own. Erased is the prime example. It follows Satoru, a struggling mangaka who gains an odd ability he dubs Revival. When a life-threatening moment is about to occur around him, he's sent back in time so that he can prevent it from ever happening. An almost unwilling hero, his depressive state conflicts with his childhood whims, which made him want to become a savior. That is, until his revival helps stop a kidnapping, leading down a spiral of events connected to his past. Uncovering the identity of the kidnapper, his mother is killed by the man just as she learns the truth, and Satoru is then framed for the murder as he returns home. But his revival activates and sends him back to 1988 when he was just 10 years old. He realizes how he has to alter history from here. He must uncover the truth behind the first kidnapping to stop the same man in the future. But this first one only occurs a few days after the time he finds himself in. His older friend Jun was originally blamed for it, and although he tried to forget this fact as an adult, Satoru remembers how much he defended Jun, how he couldn't be the evil man everyone said he was, and how no one believed him. The correction of this chain of events is obvious to him as an adult. The first victim was Kayo, a troubled girl with obvious signs for struggle that went ignored. From bruises to essays about disappearing, Kayo was a girl who had people in the right place at the right time to save her, yet they either willingly did nothing or failed to ever take note of the signs. Satoru puts some of this blame on himself, as he'd often see her alone in the park, even in winter without gloves, but he'd simply read it off as her being weird when she was avoiding her abusive home. To be fair, as a kid, there's no reason to expect him to pick up on such things. In general, we should hope and try for a world not for where people have to do so, but where these things just aren't happening. And Kayo did her best to hide these things, to prevent a collision of life around her, because it had only ever hurt her before, so why search for another version of it? But she's just a child, she couldn't hide everything, and the signs remained. What we see in the end is a simple fact. a life-changing event was around, peeking into their lives, sometimes even shouting at them, but it was never noticed. They never shared a glance like our other characters. The power of lives to change each other was there and present, but it never received the simple spur needed to activate the attention needed to make it happen. And we know this because that's exactly how Satoru corrects the past. The first step is nothing more than saying a simple hello to Kayo, to not just looking past her in the park, but rather looking at her instead. Like how Anri looked, now he does. He may have the knowledge of the future and a personal desire to change things, but it doesn't negate the joy he eventually feels from his quest and how he comes to truly care for this girl he set out to save. In that, we witness the power we all hold once more. The positive emotions which pour forth from them are all present because of a simple hello. The life she's able to lead moving forward, never falling victim to a sadistic freak, is an entire life which was able to play out in all of its beauty and glory because of a single hello. You can even see Satoru's revival power as exactly this. The world itself is telling him that simple actions can change things around him and then forcing him to pay attention and do it. Erased is a great example because it shows us not just this, but also hindsight. How we can look at everything in the past and how simple it could have been. How it can haunt us, how it is able to be fixed. If what we experience now will one day be the past, then can't we also fix our future? Can't we begin to recognize all of the beauty around us and other people and find value which collision provides? If all it takes is a glance, a hello, what's really stopping us besides temporary embarrassment? And like how Satoru felt it, didn't that fade faster than the lifetime of regret from keeping his eyes down to avoid collisions? It's a moment or a lifetime once more. Except there is something else. We have to be aware that people won't always bring positive change into our life. Was the kidnapper not another collision of life like anything else? But there are stories which explore this in full, one of them being Anohana. It's concerned primarily with Jinta, the once leader of a childhood group of friends that fell apart after one of them tragically died. Menma was Jinta's not-so-secret crush, and in a web of jealousy and unexplored and unknown emotion of childhood, the group tried to force a confession from him, spiraling into him insulting Menma, everyone running off, and her falling into the river and meeting her fate. We don't know how their childhood friendship started, and we don't even need to know how they first collided, but what we know is how it ended, with a single misguided sentence that drew a single embarrassed reaction. After that day, they never gathered in the same way as before. They drifted apart, the best of friends overtaken by tragedy. That is, until Menma returns. A sort of ghost seen only by the now reclusive Jinta, they reason that she can't pass on until he grants her last wish, but they have no idea what that wish really is. They only have one option, which is to try and exhaust the few possibilities they can think of. This begins with simple things like tracking down their old friends and trying to catch a rare Pokemon, and ends with the grand gesture of a wild, huge firework they'd always dreamed of as kids. To accomplish this, they revive the old group of friends, for better or worse, rebuilding the bonds they once shared. As the whole process plays out, their old feelings return, the same ones which led them to the catastrophe of their past, as every member learns they never quite moved on from what once was. Everything that caused them pain years before is dredged back up, inflicted again, and nearly destroys the friendships they rebuilt once more. It's here that things grow complex. Each member blames themselves for the pain which was inflicted on the whole. Jinta believes it was his lie told in embarrassment that he didn't like Menma. Naruko blames herself because she asked the question which led to this response. Atsumu blames himself for having confessed his feelings for Menma earlier, believing that influenced the course of events. And then the rest have their reasons as well. Now, this all isn't about when two lives meet, but the impact never truly stops there, does it? That random nature which brings us together is forever a part of our lives, and in the same way that we can look at the past as simply having missed a chance, we can simplify it down to make everything feel like our fault. In reality, none of them are to blame for her death. The unfortunate fact of existence is that the random nature of the world can take anyone at any time. Just as there are many right places at the right time, there are many wrong places at the wrong time. Just as anyone enters our life, they can leave it as well. Whether tragic or not, this is something we all have to deal with, the moment where we become detached from those we collided with. But in the same way we couldn't get caught up in the maybes of what we missed, we also can't stagnate on the could-haves of what we have lost. This is a specific part of what Anohana is saying on moving on from the past. We witness how much they make of a simple moment and how it destroys their lives and relationships from it. The ones who have traditionally comfortable lives are mentally tortured and deeply unhappy. Jinta drops out of school and sits at home all day. Popo wanders the world working part-time jobs, always returning to their old secret base to live for free in the past. Life is paradoxical. Sometimes, like the meaning of eyes, we can make a big deal of something simple and gain a lot from it. It can forever improve our lives, lead us to a joy we never knew, but the same kind of simple things can tear us apart, reduce us down to nothing as we exist in sadness alone. Sometimes we have to notice a small moment to know how important it can be. Other times we have to try and forget how one was. There is no formula for when and where, and each person will see it and experience it differently. It seems there's only one thing to do, to live and be aware of our current moments, since each will require its own touch. We can't force special moments to occur because then we only miss the ones that truly are. All we can do is look. But isn't that fun on its own? There's nothing more interesting to be involved with than the weird, wacky, and wild complexity of human beings. So far, we've been focusing on lives which stay together, so one drifting away would guarantee sadness. But not every meeting of life requires commitment. Not every collision finds its full value in the long term. We each live full and varied lives. To accept everyone in would be an impossible task. So what can we give in passing? This is the story of Violet Evergarden and its titular character. Once a child soldier, the only life she knew was the orders of someone else. To be told what to do it, and then to return for more. She's gifted from the cruel soul who kept her this way to his brother, Major Gilbert, who desires for her to change. But sadly, the world didn't feel the same, as Violet was crucial to ending the war her commander was deep within, and he was forced to stand back, letting her leap instinctively into violent action. Over time, a true care develops between them, but it's one Violet can't understand. Having never known love, when she hears the all-important 3 words from her major, she fails to recognize what they mean. That feeling becomes the rest of her life. Awakened in a field hospital after the end of the war, she's taken in by Claudia, a close friend of the, unknown to her, now late Gilbert. She's told to take his orders as the major's, and she begins working for his postal company. It's here her life changes forever when she witnesses the Auto Memories dolls, those who write letters to express the feelings others can't. Seeing how easily they interpret the words, "I love you," she's driven to become one so she can understand such things the same way. Although her start is rough, she eventually succeeds as one of the most fluent in her work, traveling all over to express those careful feelings others have, but can't put to words. She learns everything that she once failed to grasp. We can see clearly here that not everything needs to result in a lifelong friendship or deep love to change us. And it may even highlight what's truly important about those things, drawing them instead from the momentary relationships Violet develops. As we learned with the manic pixie nightmare, wishing for someone to change our life will only prevent us from doing it ourselves. Placing our entire being on someone else puts us at their mercy and can lead us to ruin just as easily as it could lead us to happiness. Violet relies on her idea that the Major is alive to keep going, but over the course of the series, from dying soldiers to budding travelers to actual princesses, she learns not to rely on others, not to simply follow orders, but to embrace the interactions we have with them while we do, to take the things they teach us and to use what we learn to better ourselves for ourselves, not to simply maintain or forget some other relationship. There's only one thing which is common to every collision which we'll experience across wild and random lives, and that is us. We are the only constant in our world. It may not be easy, and this isn't a case for loneliness, but we have to maintain and grow ourselves above all else. That means sometimes bringing people in and sometimes letting them go, sometimes doing nothing at all, just allowing 2 ships to pass in the night, only ever so slightly adjusting each other's path. Inherent to appreciating the moment we live in is knowing how important even the most simple interactions can be, like a letter. Violet could have looked at her work as simply that, as something to be accomplished to maintain her life so she could go home and exist, and nothing more. She could have made it meaningless despite the emotion it concerned, but she didn't. She allowed it to play out in full, emotional and taxing, but worthwhile. She observed every moment in full, allowing them to have these strong impacts that they did. Unfortunately, this is just a story. This, again, is something difficult for us. I've worked awful jobs. I know it's not possible to wake up every day and be happy that some customer is going to be rude to you and interrupt you with the job you need just to survive. In a harsh world, we don't have the energy for constant kindness. But when we have a chance, if we could make a world with more chances, wouldn't it be so nice? If for just one moment we were all able to appreciate the splendor of the world around us, to impact each other and grow and change for the better from even the smallest things, the power we all have, wouldn't that be amazing? But thousands of years of human history disagree. That's just the wishful thinking of a human being trying to be less depressed. To return to my usual realism, the most I can say is to be aware of how much the meeting or detaching of two lives can be. Don't try to force such things, but keep a sharp and clear mind and the desire to better your own life for your own sake. And you'll probably be able to meet someone to do the same thing for them as they'll do for you. This is one thing I know for sure. As always, allow me to be selfish for one moment, to put myself on the stage as a tragic character and tell my own story. I do think it'll be worthwhile to our lesson here today. Now, my story of collision is told in 3 parts. The first one which brought me closer to anyone than ever before, the one which broke that apart, and the path it set me on for the next. When I was 18, I went to a graduation party for one of my partner and I's friends. As we got there, that friend looked in my car for a second and found a Yu-Gi-Oh card on the passenger side floor. She read it and it was the most embarrassing name ever, Moisture Creature. But because she read it and we were all jokingly immature teenagers, we laughed and made it something to tease her with. And now the we mostly consisted of me and someone I'd never met before. But he jumped on the joke just as quickly as I did, and he kept making it just as much as I did, and within a couple hours we were saying that Moisture Creature was the god of our cult and got the whole group in on it. There were priests and monks of moisture, and our group chat was something like the Temple of Moisture. We bonded over how stupid we were being, how we both loved to run with one joke for the whole night. Later, the bench we were sitting on broke, and as everyone was laughing at our pain, we flipped it upside down and sat on the legs, acting like nothing had happened, even when the person who owned it came out and saw it broken and was kind of mad at us. It was the first time in my life a friendship had felt so fast, so natural and instant. We even recognized this fact together that very night. This guy I just met was instantly my best friend, even closer to me than the partner of almost 3 years who pretty much hated me by that point. I started hanging out with just him. We both watched Gurren Lagann and decided to cosplay Kamina and Viral, our favorite characters. In a motel room at 2 a.m., we came up with the name Professor Viral after watching My Hero before anyone knew what it was, because we thought Viral as a teacher would be like Aizawa, so Professor Viral. We walked around an old Civil War battlefield at midnight in a storm, dreaming up the stories we could tell together and how we could as just 2 stupid kids with no equipment or experience or anything. We started this very channel you're watching now together. The earliest videos, now made over 7 years ago, are of me and him playing single-player games, but just together. That one moment when someone naturally made the same joke as me, acted on nothing more than their own personality, kicked off everything you're witnessing right now. But things didn't last. As my relationship ended, there was actually relief at first. We both recognized we were awful for each other, and being together was nothing more than continuing what we knew. We were better friends after the fact, and it made my relationship with the entire group much better. But through the second year of college, with me and my ex attending the same school, things turned sour. Rumors flew, and unknown to me, I was made to be something I wasn't behind my back, with no chance to ever defend myself. The words of someone who hated me trumped my own, and soon the only one left from that group was my best friend. It was so much so that I decided to transfer to the school he went to an hour away and finish my degree there so we could keep making videos together. I think about how stupid my life choices might be right now, But that was by far the dumbest one I'd ever made, to change my entire life for a channel which had under 100 subscribers at the time. And now I worry about doing it when I'm closing in on 30,000. That was a complete tangent, but it's something I'd never realized until now. But he welcomed me down there. He even had me come down to the campus and see it. It was a worse school than my own, and it meant leaving the other friends I had made behind, but I did it for him, for the dream we had. I could have been happy just being there with him, making stupid videos and bullshitting the night away for however long it was. I didn't know myself or my feelings at the time. Hell, I still don't know what I was or who I am or what I liked or what I like. But as I've grown older, I've started to feel like those emotions I didn't understand may have been something like love, a definition which likely influences my desires to this very day. That summer, he decided to leave me behind as well. He lied about not being able to go to the convention where we once cosplayed our favorite characters together, saying he had a band trip that same weekend. The weekend of, he casually mentioned it was canceled, so he actually wasn't in that other city, but it was an awful lie. He didn't even say the same city across those messages. He just wanted to try and have me not go. I would have rather he just manned up and said he would like to stop being friends with me than drag me along like that, to the point where I changed my entire life. Eventually we stopped talking. I had no more faith that he would resist his partner who hated me after seeing such a blatant lie. But I couldn't transfer again without a year off, and I'd already gone through all the paperwork and payment and the stress of daily life which is placed on us to make us complacent in that way. I was locked into going into this new school where I knew no one at all. As an emotionally stunted 20-year-old, I simply ignored that fact until it was upon me in full force. I moved into the dorms as you had to in your first year, and luckily I got a solo room, maybe unluckily. My brother and his friend dropped off the last of my things, and they were off. I was left there to my own devices, truly on my own for the first time. I had no one to come home to, a completely unknown feeling for me. I just kind of sat there. I didn't know what else to do. I made some peanut butter and jelly and watched one of my favorite YouTubers play Fallout New Vegas for a weekly series as the one bright spot of that whole first weekend. I can still tell you the exact video and one of the exact moments in it where I took my first bite of the sandwich. Just about 22 minutes into Miniature Nerd's Level 1 Lonesome Road Survival 1 where he encountered an enemy he just couldn't kill. But one video, although how much I may remember it, wasn't enough distraction. As I was coming back to my room after grabbing a drink, the silence of that minute it took to return really started to hit me. Every space got smaller, from the entrance to the hallway to the elevator. It's like the building was slowly compressing me, designed to exhibit the limitation I thought myself to be in. I got to my room and unlocked it, the smallest yet of the chambers. I walked into the darkness of the small hallway which it started with, and felt the heavy doors slam behind me, a solid crash just as the light outside disappeared, except for the small bit from under the crack in the door. Like a director wanted to emphasize the journey I had taken as things were closing in around me, even the light, it marked what would be a moment I'll never forget, the small echo of its closure ringing in my mind in that darkness. I stood there, fully engulfed in the unknown I'd found myself in, abandoned and alone and small. What was supposed to be the path to my dream became my nightmare. I said to myself in a way I can never forget and something I don't even like to think about to this day, this room will be my coffin. I wondered how much Advil my body could handle at once, and maybe if it would mix awfully with the NyQuil I was half abusing to fall asleep and fix that problem. But luckily these stayed as thoughts alone. I woke up that Monday and started going to classes. By my final class on Tuesday, I was completely overwhelmed. Because of my transfer, I was in all core classes with no electives. It was a rough course load, and I didn't think I'd ever grasp all the information. It was all so new and odd, and it didn't help that I hated it and didn't want to do it, and it felt like an incohesive mess. It was mechanical, and electrical, and coding, and everything all at once, with no one there to help me, no one I knew. I couldn't even complain or forget about it for just a moment with my best friend, because he left me behind, because our collision had split. I could only cry. I did the moment I got out of earshot outside of the last class for the day. That night when I stepped in the room again, I felt that same echo of the door closing and of my words I'd said a few days before. I thought, I have to do something. This can't be my life. The next morning, I was standing outside of my first class waiting for the teacher. Since it was the first week, everyone was still nervously early, buzzing with the energy of a new chapter in life. The class had 2 lab sessions, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. I was in the morning one for that next day, and I overheard the people across from me complaining about having to be up early for it. My mind raced as it does when you're confronted with a simple act which feels so out of character. I was always a quiet person, but I forced something through my lips. I can't remember the exact words, but it was something so simple, something so meaningless, maybe even just, yeah, I'm in that one too. I never thought that those words would actually have changed my life, but they were the first small step. I had done that, I had tried at least. Then someone from out of my field of view loudly remarked, yeah, I do too, and you're gonna be my partner. Unknown to me, she was trying to get away from a creepy guy, and that was the perfect opportunity to make sure he wouldn't pressure her. By saying those few words, I lined up the shot, and she took it. The next few weeks were a dizzying array. We sat next to each other in that class and of course in the lab, and we started talking and texting constantly. She had a boyfriend back home, but she didn't want to be with him anymore, and obviously I hoped she wouldn't, and we bonded over how her relationship was like the one I had left dead, but still continuing anyway. And I saw her off that Friday for the weekend, and it was like the cheesy movie where they each pause for a moment and say bye, real quiet one after another, hold the glance for just a second too long, and finally turn away, saying everything by saying nothing at all. I started meeting her friends at lunch and other people in class from how talkative she was. One night she asked me for help studying because she'd seen the good test scores I tried to hide, and when I walked into the room, almost the entire stupid class was there as she shouted, "This is the smart guy who's gonna help us." I hated it. Suddenly, everyone knew they could ask me for help, a secret I wanted to keep because I was kind of a stupid asshole then. But it was out, and I couldn't change that fact, and I'm so fucking glad it happened now. Some of the people from that room are the ones I now love like family. I ended up being roommates with one in the shittiest, overpriced apartment I've ever seen in my life, but we sat on that porch and drank the world's worst tequila like we rolled that shitty little town. I was such a mooch, he got in the habit of buying me a cookie every time he went to the subway a block over because he knew I would just eat his food anyway. Same with his drinks, as we'd all have get-togethers at the apartment of the girl I met that day, and we'd sit there drinking and talking, and it was enough. We forgot about how awful everything was for moments at a time, and we survived. I say survived because that's what that first moment where she shouted out may have been for me. I have no idea what would have happened to me without that. Maybe I would have had another partner who was just as positive for me, maybe even more so. Maybe it would have been one who hated me. I think I would still be here, but I'll never know. The only thing I do know is that such a small and seemingly insignificant sentence changed my life. I did nothing special. It wasn't eloquent, it wasn't thought out, it wasn't even to anyone. It was just a simple fact said to the space which surrounded me. It was me trying to improve my situation for my own sake. Not hoping for something special, but knowing the only way to have it happen is to try. It wasn't my first attempt. I'd wanted to join in a couple conversations before, but never got up the nerve. By the time I carefully crafted a sentence I thought would work, it had moved on and I would just have looked weird going 2 conversations back. I guess I still did anyway. But somehow, someway, I said the right thing at the right time, like I had years before with Moisture Creature. And I did it by just living in the moment rather than overthinking it. It kicked off the chain of events which helped me to be here right now, still saying these things to you. What dispelled the nightmare was nothing meant to, nothing which had meaning inherent to itself to do so. It was simply life, the moment where everything lined up in randomness for 2 beings to collide. A moment in the grand scheme of the universe, but a lifetime of change for a single life. I wanted to bring up this topic because people have rightfully claimed I tend to find depressing meaning in the things around me. Sometimes I skip over the beauty which hides all around us. I am depressed by the world overall. I think many of us are. And I don't think we should ignore the things which make us so, because then they'll never be changed and we'll renege on our duty to the future and to ourselves. But that also doesn't mean we should ignore all the wonderful things happening as well. Sometimes we exist simply to exist, but no one is free from collisions. Sometimes we don't make decisions, but other times we just don't see that we did all we needed to collide. We have a lot of power and a lot of beauty simply by being human. It's just that it feels so normal and average we don't recognize it. But if we're all just people, then we all have some degree of power over that fact because no one can escape it because we're all equal in having life. Simply by existing, we add value to the world around us, whether we find meaning in it or not, whether we choose to or not. You do. Yes, you. You've already done so much to make the world around you a better place just by being you and colliding with the people around you. You've introduced people to new interests and stories and your own story and changed theirs and made it much more beautiful, whether you're a son or a daughter or a father or a friend or anything in between. You exist in stories just like this for so many other people. The words you said and the actions you took, the songs you shared or the club you joined or even just the work you did one day. It's led to great things down the line, even if you don't always see them. You are you, and that is powerful, and that is beautiful. And it means a lot to me, and I want to thank you for that. For a moment, we collided, even if it might feel one-sided. I hope it will lead to something positive for you as it has for me. As always, I want to extend a thanks to my wonderful patrons, but to everyone for your precious time and that bit of your story. I hope we'll collide again sometime soon.